Join us, it's the Empower Talk Show. The Empower Show.
Welcome to the Empower Talk podcast. We are Empower Talking today about inner growth. And of course, we've been using as our source document the book entitled Finding Flow in Empty Places. Such a great read. You can pick up your copy of that today as it begins to really help us see how we need to really motivate ourselves and to accelerate our thinking and our behavior even when we hit difficult points. In the United States, go to store.pj.org. And of course, if you're in England, the United Kingdom, and Europe, go to storepj.co.uk to pick up your copy today of Finding Flow in Empty Places. Listen to this. Finding Flow commits entirely to the costly process of personal change and transformation. The costly process of personal change and transformation. How difficult is it sometimes for us to stay on the cutting edge of change and the cutting edge of transformation? All of us have to evolve. We cannot stay in the same place all of the time. And Finding Flow always encourages us to find what it takes to improve ourselves and to not just grow externally, but also to grow internally. You can certainly pay a lot of attention, put a lot of money into how you look. But how are we internally? And what are our values saying? And what are our concepts saying? And what are we feeding our minds and feeding our spirit? What are we feeding ourselves to be a better person? It's going to cost. It is an investment, an education in yourself, an education in your business, an education in your future is going to be costly. And for those of us who have made that transition, we understand that in order to be something better, to be something greater, we're going to have to invest in change and transformation. We're going to have to come to terms with the fact that in order for us to scale and to evolve, it's going to take an effort, and there's going to be a cost and investment. And so sometimes, I don't want to always describe it as cost, but there is going to be an investment. There has to be an investment in everything that we do. Growth is intentional. We have to want to grow. We have to want to improve. We have to want to scale. We have to want to go to the next level, to go to the next dimension. It's not something that just happens, but it comes behind some thinking and a thought about where we are and where we want to go, and what is the vehicle that will get us from where we are to the next place in our lives. And so everything's about intentionality. We have to be intentional about the plans we make. We have to be intentional about the investment. We have to be intentional about the sacrifice of time. We have to be intentional about the scheduling of what we do and how we do things and when we do things. And we have to set in place and we have to set in motion a schedule of change and transformation. That has to be intentional. Nothing's going to happen because we wish it, because we want it. It's going to happen because we commit to it. And committing to it is an intentional act. So growth is intentional. It is directionally specific. Growth is directionally specific, which means that we have to establish the end of a thing so that we can begin it. Could it be that perhaps we have not completed some assignments or completed some of the things that we have in mind because we did not establish a target? If you don't establish an end, then you'll never begin the process of achieving what that takes. And so the plan always involves here's the vision, here's the end of the thing, here's the end of my planning, here's the end of my growth pattern, here's the end of my ascent and my arise. And if I can understand what the end of the thing is going to be, then I can begin to start. The concept is this, that we always have to begin with an end in mind. If we don't have direction, if we don't have a target, I've heard it said that if you never see the top of a mountain, why would you climb? If you can't envision where you're going, you may not be able to see it always. But visionaries always envision an end, an intentional end. Because when we envision an intentional end, then our actions and our behavior will be consistent with beginning. How is it that we achieve where it is that we're going? Without directional emphasis or purposeful efforts, we escape pragmatism. There can be no practical layout of a plan, if we try to avoid purposeful planning and directional emphasis. And this is such a key thought that I want you to grasp, because finding flow in empty places always reminds us, what are you working on, where are you going, and what are you trying to achieve? What is the end of a thing? Because if you never gravitate towards the target, then sometimes we have not achieved because we didn't start. It's not because we didn't have the idea. It's not because we weren't motivated to become it. It's not that we didn't have a desire to do something wonderful. But if you don't establish a directional emphasis, if you don't have an end to a thing, all sports have this in mind. There is an end zone. This is where I'm trying to get to. I know it's rough. I'm being hit. I'm being tackled. I have to face all kinds of hurdles and distractions and hindrances. But at least I know where I'm going. And it oftentimes makes the hits and the disturbances and the distractions worth it, because we are advancing ourselves towards the end zone, to the thing that we know that we have to do. So direction is anchored by purpose. And so we have a purpose, and then it anchors or it determines our direction, but it must be to a location. It must be to an end. It must be to a destiny. And so we have to be destiny thinkers. We have to be destiny planners. We have to be to have destiny ideas, because if we don't have destiny ideas, then we'll never begin the road or the path towards destiny if we never establish destiny in mind. The fury of our business efforts rarely translates into quality work unless it partners with direction. And so one of the simple definitions that I've often used, that vision means direction. Vision means direction. If there is no vision, there is no direction. There must be an end in mind, so that we can quickly begin to ascertain and to judge and to evaluate what we're doing. We can be laborious and energetic without sometimes achieving the goals that we have set. This is the undergird of this, that even sometimes when we establish an end, we are energetic and we are laborious, but if we don't keep our eye on the prize, if we don't keep our eye on where we're going. And so I want us to be able to establish goals and destinies that are achievable. That oftentimes when we have those apparent dreams and visions, and we begin to think outside of who we are, to think greater, we have to be able to document what that end is, because we always have to remind ourselves where it is that we're going. Sometimes in the midst of life, in the midst of the things that happen, all the other responsibilities, the unexpected movements, the turbulence of life, the things that need to happen, then we often lose a concept of the end. But we have to know how to avoid the turbulence, so that we can begin to really make sure that we know where we're going. Even if we get hit and discouraged, and sometimes we get so down with our plans, or we just feel physically, we feel like we're not making it. But there is an inner strength, and there is an inner growth that we have to pay attention to. That even though things externally may not look like we're progressing, it may not look like we're even achieving, but because there is a plan, it helps us to get back up when we feel like we failed, and remind ourselves, what is the vision for this? What is the destination for this? When we plan, it demands that we also sync our expectations with specific work objectives, without which our best efforts are literally like a ship without a sail. Do you get that imagery? That if we do not make sure that our plans are connected to a direction, it means that we're out there on the ocean of life. We're out there on the sea of experience, and yet we're not really achieving what we want to achieve, because it was not established by a plan or by purpose. And so I want to talk you today about your inner growth. What is it that's happening on the inside of you in spite of what's happening on the outside of you? Many times, because we look outwardly for answers, we look externally for resolution, we talk to people outside of our circles to try and get direction. But we forsake some of the greatest conversations that we have, and that conversation is with our inner growth. How are we progressing, and how are we growing? And we might be groaning and we might be having difficulties in everything that we do, but we have to believe that I am growing inwardly, even though it may not feel that that's happening in my life. So without that, yes, we're going to be, we're going to be on the sea of forgetfulness, or we're going to be on the ocean of doubt and fear. But we have to be able to position our sails. An experienced salesman will always look at a storm differently. The storm is unexpected, wasn't planned, but the storm is still useful. Can I remind you that as far as inner growth is concerned, your storm is still useful. It is useful to you if you know how to use the storm. Have you learned how to use what comes against you? Have you learned how to repackage and to reshape and to repurpose the things that were not meant to help you, to serve you in a certain way? It was not meant to serve you patience. It was meant to serve you disorganization, but you were able to transform that into something else, what the experienced sailor does. And we've been experienced with what life can bring to us. We have always seen the unexpected, the things that we didn't like, the things that we had to overturn, the things that we wish didn't happen. Sometimes you can get in the quagmire of just, why did this happen? And we get stuck there, right? Finding flow in empty places wants to move us out of those stuck places by understanding all we need to do to release our inner growth is to adjust our sails. The storm is still the storm. The pain is still the pain. The hurt is still the hurt. The disappointment is still the disappointment. But if we learn how to adjust our sails in the middle of what we're going through, then it will feed our inner growth. We can make progress even when we can't see it or when we don't feel it. You're growing even when you don't know it. And so in order to grow, then we have to establish, what do we want to grow into? Do you remember as a child, somebody may have asked you, what are you going to do? Who are you going to be when you grow up? There must be a grown-up plan. There must be a destination and a plan. And so we're empowered talking today about inner growth. And inner growth needs a stimulus. It needs to be refreshed. It needs to be reminded. And more than ever, it needs a specific plan. This is why we don't chart the steps. We don't chart the days, although we can. What we do remind ourselves is, where are we going? We do chart the destination. We do chart the destiny. Because if we have destiny and a destination, then what that does is inside of us, it fires up determination. It fires up the ability to keep going even when we feel like we should stop. What keeps us motivating? What keeps inner growth? What keeps turning over our inner growth? Is that our inner growth, our gifting and our abilities are so wonderful despite what we see and what we hear. And this is part of what we have to do. So my challenge to us today, as we do this Empower Talk moment, is to let you know that pay attention to your inner growth. And even though things come to stifle you, even though things come to rob you of certain abilities, you have to know that inside of you, there's still something that's turning over. And you're growing, you're becoming who you have planned to become. If you learn to have the wisdom to adjust your sails so that even though externally it might look doubtful, but internally my inner growth is still very much alive. It's been wonderful to be with you in this Empower Talk podcast moment. Join me again, and remember, you have to fuel your inner growth.